from the News Channel 5 network, this is OpenLine.
Thank you for joining us on OpenLine. I'm Levi Ismail. We'll have Dr. John Vile join us here in a moment. But of course, you can always tune in by calling us at 615-737-7587. Tonight, we're talking all things politics. And, you know, first and foremost, I'm going to introduce Dr. John Vile, who is a political science professor over at MTSU. Dr. Vile, are you there?
I am.
All right, perfect. You know, there's when I saw the topic of politics for this evening, I thought, wow, there's so many different things that we could be talking about, but I tried to narrow things down a little bit by keeping some notes. And, you know, we kind of talked a little bit earlier, but, you know, I think first and foremost, let's start with Mar-a-Lago. You know, this is an FBI search on an unprecedented FBI search of former President Donald Trump's property out there in Florida. And so, first and foremost, what was going through your mind when you heard about the search in the first place?
There are quite a few things, obviously. I guess one of the things was, it looks like the FBI made an attempt to be more solicitous for Trump than they would be for an ordinary individual. It's not uncommon. In fact, I think Paul Manafort, if I remember, when they did a search warrant on him, they woke him up at 6 in the morning, brought him out in his pajamas. The sirens were, I don't know if the sirens were going, but the lights were all going, and, you know, the media was there. This one, if I understand correctly, was actually announced by Donald Trump pretty much at the end of the day. Sounds like they waited till mid-morning to come in. Instead of having uniforms on, they came with shirts and ties, suits and ties. But I guess the other thing that's that's difficult to understand is, if he's had this material there so long and they knew it, you know, they'd already gotten some information, why did it take them so long to execute the warrant? And I don't know. My suspicion would be that they got the documents back, they looked through them, and it's like, well, this document refers to another document. Where is it? But, you know, we don't know for certain at this point.
Okay. And for those folks who might not know what this search is all about, it's my understanding that the FBI is looking for sensitive material that Donald Trump may have taken with him to his property that should have really stayed at the Capitol. Or at the White House, I should say.
Yes, although there's some related, you know, this could be a violation of what's known as the Espionage Act, which has some problematic features, but, you know, basically it's designed to protect security. But part of the issue seems to be that the Trump attorneys had claimed that all the materials had been returned, and somehow, maybe through an inside informant, the FBI found out, no, there's still top secrets there. So, you know, that could end up in obstruction of justice or perjury or something else. And I guess the most puzzling, and in some ways the scariest aspect of this, is not only are some of the documents apparently marked, you know, super duper top secret, and there's a more technical term, but also some of them apparently involve nuclear secrets. And, you know, it's not the kind of thing that you would think an ex-president or anybody would really want lying around their house. I mean, seems like that could expose you to all kinds of problems.
Well, and I mean, you just mentioned earlier that we're talking about, you know, it's unprecedented seeing a president, yes, you know, in the middle of something like this. But you mentioned earlier that it wasn't like they pounded on his door middle of the night to wake him up and, you know, gather all of these documents, right, and go through the process of figuring out what he might have. This was a much more courteous, if you will, approach that the FBI took.
And of course, you know, to do a legal search other than in exigent circumstances, you have to go to a judge and establish what's known as probable cause. You know, it's more likely than not that there is information there that could lead to, you know, a criminal investigation or possible criminal charges. And, you know, the big factor today, which has added a lot of spice to this, is, you know, they've already released sort of a list of some of the documents, very general list, but how many folders they got and what they deal with. And today, they have asked to actually many news organizations have asked that the affidavit, which would be the written justification for the search, that it be released. And somewhat to my surprise, it sounds like the judge is willing to do so, albeit with names of informers and names of people who they might have talked to as witnesses redacted, which is to say blocked out so that they cannot be read.
Which you would think makes sense if we're talking about very sensitive information and how the FBI would have learned that this information existed with President Trump.
Right.
And I guess I can see the reasoning behind the media and whoever else might want transparency in all of this, especially when we're talking about a former president. These are very tough accusations that are being made. You just mentioned the word espionage earlier, and people hear that term and it's like your eyes light up. And so when we're talking about something as serious as that, I can understand the transparency of it. But talk to me about why President Donald Trump might want this affidavit to be released.
Well, it may, depending on what is redacted, it may give him a little bit better indication of, where he, what kind of expertise he needs on his legal term. It might give something of a roadmap to where the investigation is headed. I mean, he has, 3 general charges that have been made, but, probably more specific than that. But I should add, there's an adage that you ought to be careful what you ask for or what you pray for. This might be one of those cases. It might be one of the cases where people read the affidavit and say, my gosh, this really is a threat. What's this material doing in an ex-president's house?
No, absolutely. And, I'm wondering myself, because today was the first time that I'd heard that, President Trump was leaning in the direction of wanting this information to be out there, wanting the public to be able to see this affidavit, whereas the Justice Department is saying, well, actually, no, because there's a lot of very sensitive data that's in here, and the last thing we want is to compromise this investigation. I think they mentioned that there are some people who they may call as witnesses to testify about, what information is at Mar-a-Lago right now. But I guess, where does this leave us at this point in terms of moving forward? Because it seems like we don't really know what was gathered, but at the same time, it was enough that the Justice Department says, maybe we don't want all of this to be public.
Right. Let me go back just a little. It's not altogether clear whether Trump wants it released or not. He has said he does. But as I understand it, he didn't actually instruct his attorneys to join the news media in asking for its release. It's sort of, he has his cake and he's eating it too. He said that he wants it, but he hasn't actually filed to do it. The problem right now is it's a juggling act, and you have more than one juggler. You have civil investigations in New York relating to his business practices, which, would not necessarily affect his conduct in government, that sort of thing. But you have, separate investigations in Washington, D.C., obviously with the January 6th committee. To what extent did the president incite, encourage, illegal actions? And then you have, particularly in Fulton County, Georgia, but elsewhere, apparently we got investigations as to whether the phone calls that the president made to the electors or to the governors of the state or to, maybe even to Mike Pence, were they actually calling for criminal or illegal action? So, and if you remember, if you had asked me 3 or 4 years ago what might bring Trump down, I might have said, well, it's going to be an allegation from a prostitute or some kind of sexual scandal. He's, survived a couple of those. And if I remember correctly, I believe there's still a civil suit out there involving, whether he stole the truth or one of his accusers has stole the truth. So, as I say, a lot of different balls in the air and a couple different jugglers at the same time.
Dr. John Weil, thank you so much. We'll be right back. Again, this is Open Line. You can call us at 615-737-7587. We'll be back.